Hello everyone, and welcome to the first Learn CSS video. This video is not going to cover any actual code because there's a lot of overall concepts that we need to cover before you can get in and start coding in CSS. So what is CSS? CSS stands for Cascading Style Sheets, and it's a language that works in conjunction with HTML to style content on a web page. It is primarily responsible for the look and feel of a web page. So you see when you write in HTML that your result in your browser window is not very attractive. Hence why if I do an H1, you'll see that it's basically just bigger and bolder, but CSS gives you the ability to both locate that particular piece of content and style it accordingly. One important thing to know with CSS is that while there are no real concerns about browser support of HTML, there are legitimate concerns about that with CSS. This is partly due to the history of CSS because CSS developed later than HTML, and initially in the very early days of the web, HTML was solely responsible for the presentation, the look of a web page. And in the mid-90s, CSS started to develop as a solution for the fact that HTML got more and more and more bloated. However, browser support has been pretty spotty even from the beginning, even from the mid-90s through to today. Different browsers support different features within CSS, and in general, I will explain in these videos when particular things that you're learning are going to differ between your browsers. Next, I'm going to cover a few concepts at the core of CSS that are necessary for you to understand and write CSS. So first is this idea of the separation of content and presentation. And this is something I've already covered a little bit, but the entire purpose of CSS is to style your HTML content. Therefore, these two languages pretty clearly split out content markup, which is the responsibility of HTML, and presentation or style or look. And you can think of it this way. Basically, HTML's role is to say, here's some content, here's what that content is. CSS's role is to say, here's how that content should look. And that is why pretty much anything that you're doing in HTML to make your document look a particular way is not the correct thing to be doing. You need to be doing that with CSS. And you'll see as we get into more CSS code writing that will allow you to be much more efficient and effective with your styles. The next two concepts that are really important to know are graceful degradation and progressive enhancement. These two are two sides of the same coin. And the situation is that because of browser support issues and individual machines being slightly different from each other, it's the responsibility of somebody coding in CSS to accommodate the fact that their website might not look identical between different devices and different browsers. The important thing to know here is that you will need to anticipate situations where a particular style that you are trying to apply doesn't work. And therefore, that's where graceful degradation comes into play. And the idea is you set up your site with the styles as you would like them in an ideal world, but then you provide what are called fallbacks, or basically things that will take place if the ideal situation doesn't actually work for any particular user. So imagine, for instance, that you have a complicated gradient background that's a very, very dark color, and you have light colored body text on that. If you do not apply a background color as a fallback that's a dark color with the white text, then if your gradient background doesn't work, then users are going to see a white background with white text, which is a huge, huge problem. Progressive enhancement is the other side of this, and progressive enhancement is the idea that instead of providing fallbacks, you actually design the website with the kind of low grade, lowest level styles on there, and then you progressively add in styles that will enhance the look and feel of a site, and will, in many cases, take place for many users, but not necessarily all users. So they're just different approaches to the exact same idea, which is that not every user will see your site the exact same way, and you need to accommodate that as a web developer. The final concept I want to cover in this video is what's called the box model. And the box model basically says that any piece of HTML content, such as this H1 right here, has an invisible box around it. And part of the job of CSS is going to be to control that box. And we'll get into this in later videos about layout and positioning, but you can control the space within the box, the space outside the box, as well as the border of the box. Finally, I wanted to say that you will be learning in these videos CSS3. Unlike HTML5, CSS3 is not a nice, neat, codified standard. It's actually a bunch of different standards splintered up into individual little pockets. That's kind of the theme of working with CSS, is that it is not as consistent as HTML. CSS3, though, includes a lot of excellent styles and features that you're going to want to know how to do. So things like animations, opacity, drop shadows. You can also do what's called flexbox, which is a much more natural form of layout, and tons of other options. The next video will cover CSS syntax. Thanks for watching.